So this was an interesting thing. This was well, it's something that I've been thinking about for a while. It was interesting to talk with the peer who observed me. It was interesting to talk with the rest of the cohort in the micro-teaching session. I covered similar areas, and we sort of talked about these things. I think it's genuinely an area that I had an opinion about and changed my mind, which is nice to see. I sort of thought it through, and I read a lot, and I talked to people, and there are some areas in the essay that I mark out for future development, which are suggested by the peer observer. So I'm just going to go through these. One is that one is covered in the feedback, the marked feedback as well, which you can also look at on this page, is to give a clearer session outline and indication of what the students should expect to see in the lecture. This is still something that I'm fairly bad at, I've realised, because I mean, there are two aspects to this. One is whether I produce a timed session plan. I mean, I've seen some sessions that I've observed, one in particular where, and sessions that I've seen others planning, which I haven't observed the actual session, but I've seen the plans for, where it's sort of 5 minutes for this, 10 minutes for this, 5 minutes for this, and I didn't do it like that. What I did was a bit more vague, and I think that's important when you're teaching a subject at this level. Now, I should say that when I observed the skilled lecturer, he also had a 5 minutes of this, 10 minutes of that type plan all the way through the hour, with very little flexibility, but he's teaching mathematics to physicists, and it's a higher level of mathematics, and they've really got to get through the material. What I'm doing in forensics, in scientific mathematics, is trying to pick up the mathematics that they haven't learned so far, or that they aren't confident with, though they have learned it, and what that needs is plenty of time for the students to get on with it. So I don't think I needed to produce a more detailed time plan, and there wasn't really a suggestion that I might, but it was something that I wondered about. But the other aspect is telling the students at the start of the lecture, here's what we're going to do today, and here's what you hope to do by the end of it, and I didn't, and I perhaps should. And I looked at the materials. I then, following scientific mathematics, I didn't teach for a semester. I just took labs, and then I did teach, but problem solving was mostly group work, projects, independent learning. But there were 2 sessions at the start which I taught. I gave a sort of 10 or 15 minute talk at the start, and I've just looked at the slides, and in either of them, again, do I have a session plan, session outline. So this is something that I obviously haven't picked up properly, that I need to think about. I think certainly in the case of the second session in problem solving, I just wanted to launch in there and surprise them a little bit, and it's difficult to do that and do a plan, but I could give them a vague, here's what we're going to go through, even if it doesn't have to be too specific. So I need to do that. I need to get my act together on that, essentially. Another comment was that I could perhaps slow down my speaking, that my natural enthusiasm was taking off, and I think this is something that it was given to me in the feedback here, and then elsewhere in the portfolio is an ELMS seminar that I gave, and there as well, when I watched that back, I thought, goodness me, I'm speaking so quickly and stumbling over my words. And since then, I've actually given, as part of my IMA role in particular, I've given a lot of talks and lectures, and I've tried very hard to do that, to calm down, to speak more slowly, not to get ahead of myself, not to mumble my words into one another, and so forth. One bit of feedback is face the class. Now, this is always good advice, face the class when speaking, and I obviously wasn't to a sufficient extent, and particularly with scientific mathematics, I had so much time, there was really no need for me to be writing on the board and speaking at the same time. I could write on the board and then turn and speak. That was daft of me. I don't need to watch that. And then the last couple of things are possible inclusion of group work. Now, I didn't teach scientific mathematics again, so that's something that I haven't done. I haven't taught anything like it. I did do a group work module, but that was coincidental. And to include a formal break. Now, I was running the sessions, and the students would naturally take a break at some point, and I would just let them. I wouldn't sort of tell them, come on, you've got to get on with it. I was just happy to let them choose when a break happened. Because of the nature of the class, they're working through it at their own pace, but the observer thought that it might be more useful to have a formal break. Now, I've not taught such a long session since then. Part of the issue was it was a 2-hour session, and since then I've only taught sort of an hour, and that's quite often mostly independent learning in the case of problem solving. One issue that comes out in the feedback as well to the essay is the question of why are 2 students attending, and I tried to cover this right at the start of the essay, where most of the students had an A-level in mathematics, yet the course was aimed at people who did not, or didn't have a recent A-level in mathematics. So in some ways they were perhaps misplaced doing this course. And there's a particular quote that I quote Tony Croft talking about teaching students with GCSE mathematics and students with A-level mathematics in the same class is problematic and in many cases counterproductive. And actually the material here was probably, certainly at the start, was aimed at people who didn't have an A-level in mathematics, and basically what happened was it put off the students who had an A-level in mathematics from attending. I mean, what do you do there? You've got 2 different students coming from 2 different points of view, and one of them needs more instruction at the start than the other. I mean, that to me sounds a bit like you need 2 different classes. I suggested this a little bit to some of the lecturers, and it met quite a frosty response because there aren't the resources to teach the 2 different classes. So it's unfortunately the best of both. Well, the best case that we're going to get, I think. So it's a difficult one, that, and it really is a problem. I don't know if it was unusual for the courses whose students I was teaching to take in a lot of students with A-level mathematics. I'm not sure. So, I mean, in conclusion, well, one of my aims in taking the PGCHE was that I really wanted to get to grips with some educational literature. I wanted to find out more about the background of education, partly to do with my PhD. I wanted a bit more rigour in that sense, and partly just if I was going to be lecturing, I wanted to know more about it. And I feel like this essay in particular was really a good opportunity for me to do this, to really get into those issues of deep versus surface learning and how to teach mathematics to non-specialists, and I feel like that went really well. I mean, I'm really pleased. I think it's informed a lot of my thinking later on as well. I say at the end of the essay I was a bit worried about the students that I taught, as to whether I just gave them procedural knowledge that they then, a year on, will they now be able to remember anything that I taught them? This is problematic, I think. I mean, this is really, in retrospect, I'm not sure what the outcome will be of that, but I can't particularly contact those students to find out about that. I didn't get to teach the module again, and that's another real shame. I mean, the opportunity just wasn't there to do it. I tried to ask if I could, but the opportunity wasn't there to teach the same module again. So that's a shame, because I feel like I've taught it once, I've learned something, I can then apply that, and of course the opportunity didn't arise. So I'm still at a state now where I just haven't taught anything of the like since. So I'm sort of still waiting for the opportunity to apply some of the learning that I've had.